the technology part of how things have advanced has really been amazing, I would say, for the most part, because it just allows us to be able to help them at most any time and them to be, anywhere in the world, and they can deal with it.
And focus more on what's important. You're not worried about driving all over the place to get signatures. So it's certainly been it's a good time to be in real estate. Yeah,
and I think the only maybe detriment to that is there's been a heightened sense of urgency with all the technology. Now an offer may come in on a property at 8 p.m. like for you, right, the other day, and they give you no time to respond to it, but that is sort of a reality of
what's happening.
Yeah.
I will say a negative side of that as well is just the personal connection.
Yes.
I feel like you can do a transaction, really with just, phone calls, DocuSign, without having that face-to-face, communication. Like obviously we go out of our way to do it because our clients are very important, but it's one of those things where I think that's a bit of a miss too, because, everyone's you can do everything at arm's length now. You can do everything from home, where my favorite part about real estate is working with the clients and being one-on-one with them. So I would say that that's certainly a negative to it. And I think you and I and our team do a great job of making sure that it doesn't impact the relationship when we do a transaction.
Yeah, I totally agree. The current environment is not really an environment where competitive bids are happening, but they do happen, and I mean, certainly we've got experience with competitive bids and markets where you have to be as sharp as you can when you submit as a buyer, and knowing how to handle, how to deal with that
process
in the seller's shoes. I think that in those situations when there's a competitive environment, which sometimes, in this local geography, it happens sometimes in the spring, right? More often than not, in the time of year, it'll be in the spring. And just making sure that a buyer is aware of the comparables, right? That they're completely educated on what things that they've been looking at have been going for and how quickly they've been moving. And also what their competitors are, like who their other buyers that they're competing against are, right? Just knowing, okay, if you're a first-time home buyer, you are competing against maybe other first-time home buyers, and they also can be as strong as can be from a condition perspective. Versus if you're looking at a maybe a kind of a mid-range property in this area, say in the low 1 millions. That you're dealing with upsizers who maybe have a home to sell and potentially downsizers, and just kind of understanding
who the competition may be.
I think those are kind of critical things to be aware of.
And I always try and not let the process get skewed by having a competing situation. I never like to have clients overextend themselves. I never like to have clients give up due diligence that they're not comfortable with. Because if you get in competing situations and you end up removing conditions that you're not comfortable doing, and you end up buying the home, that's not great. If you are comfortable and you are aggressive, perfect, then you can go forward with that. But the process, I want to make sure you're still staying within your comfort zone, and same with price. We'll do an analysis and we'll be able to share what we believe a fair value is. If you really like the house and we want to be more aggressive, we absolutely can, but the transparency needs to be there. And I always try and give the advice of, when you're in a competing situation, you got to be happy if you get the house and happy if you don't. You pick a number. If you're only going to pay $1 million and it sells for $1,015,000, you say, okay, I would have been upset to buy it for that, for happy to get there. But if you buy it for $1 million, you don't want to sit there and go, I wish I had pulled more money back and only paid $950 for it. So it's a bit of a tricky one in that mentality, because you are competing, while at the same time, I really don't like it when people really put themselves out there. It is a different thing to navigate, and it hasn't been a hot topic, being the market has been a little bit slower lately, but if that does come around, it still does happen even organically. It's important to have a realtor that can help you navigate through that.
And I think there are miscellaneous advantages you can do, or things that you can make your presentation just a smidge better with. Showing financial liquidity for deposits and things like that, or showing that you've got your due diligence pieces lined up, like you've got an appraiser on the line and an inspector that's booked for 2 days after, or something like that, if you are including conditions, and just making sure that you're trying to be as prepared as possible if you do have due diligence to do, that you can expedite and complete those.
And showing good faith. We're not just going to put this in and scramble to get it done. We are committed to this, we want this, and this is showing our sense of eagerness.
And sometimes I would argue that it's an advantage to include a letter, as long as there's no insulting of the home or anything like that. I think there can never be something that makes it too personal. I think it is a very transactional experience when you're bidding against other buyers, and a seller sees, conditions, terms, price. Price is a big one that jumps out at them, right? And if you can sort of make it about the personal, the person behind the
offer,
the paperwork, right? And what you love about the property and stuff. I would say, in my opinion, it never hurts.
Oh, for sure. And I think it warms up the whole situation. Knowing that the person on the other side is a family or a young couple or a single person, whatever it is, just having an understanding of them. That usually a picture also helps, because it kind of humanizes the whole process. It's not just a piece of paper being told you by your realtor. So it doesn't cost any money, a little bit of effort, and it does go a long way. When I see buyers, I'll sit down with them for the first time and I'll say, what's your wish list, what's your wants, what's your needs, what are you looking for? And sometimes in their mind, what they think they're looking for, doesn't really work out, or it doesn't really work. There isn't the product for it, or they really don't like that kind of scenario. And I've had a number of instances where people say, I want a newer house, I want in this location, and I want double car garage. And then I don't know where they'll call and say, well, there's a Century Home downtown that I've absolutely fallen in love with. So there are some things to kind of keep in mind as a buyer of the emotional attachment, what's right for your family, what's right for you to buy, and kind of keeping that in mind. And you want to buy a house with your heart, but you also need to buy it logically with your head, and making sure that it is the right decision for your lifestyle. Yeah,
for sure. And I think with first-time home buyers, sometimes I think what we need to express, and that's part of our job, is that there can be good value out there, right? Even if something needs a bit more sweat equity and stuff like that. Like, we have the experience, we see the daily updates and the daily movement of real estate that really allows us to distinguish when a property has good value. And so sometimes when, a first-time home buyer that may be kind of initially thinking that they need something that's turnkey, move-in ready, and then they've got this wish list of what they need and then the price. Sometimes it's our job to show that, hey, this home might need some tender love and care over time. It's not immediate, but you've got good bones here and there's good value to be had in this kind of product.
And put yourself in a better spot 5 years down the road. It's more than just bricks and mortar when people downsize. Like, these houses mean so much to them, to their family, their memories. It's going to be a house for them that, even though they are downsizing, that's going to be such an important part of their life that they're always going to remember. And for us to have that privilege of coming in, learning about it, helping them through that process, and disrupt that for them. Their house has probably been the same way for a long time. I know, my mom's house hasn't changed quite a bit in the last 30 years, and to be the ones to go in there and say, okay, we need to declutter, we need to clean, we need to have open houses. We're the ones that are kind of along for the journey with them, and it's a big journey. It's an emotional one, and it's like you said, it's a privilege, and I love hearing about it, and it really brings the personal side of real estate back. That one's very not transactional. That is, you're part of that with them, and it's my favorite part about it, because you get to hear them, really get to know them, and then when they get in their new place, they're happy for that next step, and that transition, I think, is really exciting.